What is shaken, Internet? This is Salt bringing you the How to Tank for Dummies Vengeance Demon Hunter Guide. This guide is targeted at newer tanks that are just trying to learn how to be demon hunters, aka pretty much everyone, and will cover the talents, abilities, and general playstyle of Vengeance tanks. If you're looking for the very basics of tanking in general, click on the annotation in the video here to get a brief overview of all things tanking. If you're looking for how to tank a specific dungeon or raid content, click on the annotation in the video here to access my specific guides. So, the Demon Hunter is the newest class in the game, introduced with the Legion expansion. They are hunters of demons, if that wasn't obvious, and are the lieutenants of Illidan. They're the big bullies that want to beat up the little bullies instead of the nerds, so there's enough mutual respect out there to be friendly. Demon Hunter tanks are in the Vengeance talent tree, of which Demon Hunters only have 2. Havoc is the other one for DPS. If you're going Havoc, you're in the wrong place. Now, Demon Hunters thrive on mobility, being able to leap around the battlefield constantly. They're a bit of a mix between warrior, druid, death knight, and maybe a little monk. Definitely not paladins, though. Freaking pallies. The playstyle of Demon Hunters mostly reflects dealing damage and doing some self-healing, along with a lot of minor cooldowns to manage. They're most similar to Death Knight tanks from previous expansions, if I'd have to say one, although they take elements from many of the different classes. If you like the idea of being a flying half-demon that can wield warglaives, then listen on. Wait, who am I kidding? Who plays WoW and doesn't like the sound of that? So the first things we'll be covering is abilities. I want to explain all of your abilities first in basic move rotation. Then we'll discuss talents and how they relate or change things. Now, Demon Hunters have a resource called Pain. It's very similar to Rage or Runic Power in that it starts at 0, goes up by using specific moves, and then falls off outside of battle, meaning you'll generally start most fights with 0 pain. Nearly all of your moves will generate pain for you, and unsurprisingly, getting hit in the face by enemies will also generate pain. Don't try this at home, kids. Pain will be spent on your primary healing move and your primary active mitigation, mostly. In addition to the pain mechanic, Demon Hunters also get the lovely ability to double jump and glide, allowing for some serious ups. Now finally, Demon Hunters get soul fragments through your basic moves that will appear around you. These are little wisps, purple by default, but can be changed through minor glyphs, that will heal you if you walk over them. Kind of like Monk's little soul balls, if you've ever tried them out. Luckily, you don't have to actually walk over them to get the benefit, as we'll see in just a moment. So now let's go ahead and cover your basic moves. The moves we'll be using all of the time are Shear, Soul Cleave, Sigil of Flame, Immolation Aura, and Infernal Strike. Shear is both your filler move, since it has no cooldown, and your basic pain increaser. It does a little amount of damage to your target and gets you 10 pain. It also is the lowest priority, so use it pretty much whenever you can't use anything else. One additional note is that using Shear has a small chance to create one of those soul fragments I discussed, those little healing wisp things. This is why you pretty much should use it whenever you get the chance. Soul Cleave is your big healing move and your primary pain spender. It costs at least 30 pain to use and will hurt all enemies in front of you, heal you for a decent amount, and also consume any soul fragments nearby, so you don't have to actually go out and collect them yourself. Additionally, Soul Cleave will eat more than 30 pain, all the way up to 60 pain, to give bonus damage and healing to the move. It's pretty much your top priority to use this. Best to use it at 60 pain, but if it's not available, it's not really a bad idea ever to use it. Immolation Aura is an explosive AoE that continues doing damage for its duration to all nearby enemies. This does a ton of damage on cast and a small amount of damage throughout its duration to anything nearby, so it pretty much should be used on cooldown. It would take priority like a Soul Cleave if you don't need healing immediately, but generally they both should just be used whenever possible. Now, Sigil of Flame is your non-tank move, although it's great for keeping threat. It lets you place an area on the ground that does decent damage over its duration to any enemies in it. Like I said, it really doesn't help your tankiness, but it's a great move to pick up new adds. It's also slightly higher in priority than Shear, but lower than Immolation or Soul Cleave. Now, Infernal Strike is the last basic move we'll go ahead and discuss. Again, it doesn't really do anything for your tankiness, but it's really freaking cool. Infernal Strike lets you leap to a target location where you will do a decent chunk of damage. It is on a charge system, so you can actually leap twice in succession if you have 2 charges. Again, this is lower priority than your other moves, and you should probably keep a leap in reserve in case adds are going to spawn or something, because it's pretty much your only big mobility move. So that's it for moves you'll be using constantly. Priority is Soul Cleave, especially if you have lots of pain. Immolation Aura next for pain generation. Sigil of Flame and Infernal Strike on cooldown for damage, and Shear for filler. Next up is Active Mitigation, which Demon Hunters have Demon Spikes and Empower Wards. Demon Spikes is your physical damage reductor on a charge system. Use a charge and get 6 seconds of reduced physical damage, and you get a new charge every 15 seconds. Basically, if the enemies aren't hitting you with spells, go ahead and use Demon Spikes constantly. Empower Wards is basically the same thing for magic damage. It reduces your magic damage for a few seconds, but doesn't have a charge counter, and instead just has a slightly longer cooldown. These two moves will be your primary mitigation bread and butter, and generally should be used on cooldown unless there's something specific to use them on. Note that Demon Spikes does cost a small amount of pain, but really that shouldn't be an issue. Technically, Soul Cleave is part of your active mitigation since it heals for a lot, but you'll be using it as part of your main rotation, so I'm going to go ahead and skip talking about it again. Now next up are cooldowns, which Demon Hunters have two, one big and one little. Fiery Brand is I'm going to say cooldown because it's on a 1 minute cooldown, but it essentially reduces the damage your target does to you by a big chunk for a short amount of time. It's great against single target bosses and should be used on cooldown, unless they have a big super move that you can save it for. Now Metamorphosis is the big daddy. It increases your max health by a bunch, gives you a ton of pain, and lasts 15 seconds, which is really long for such a big cooldown. During this time, you should be able to spam bonus soul cleaves for extra healing on top of having tons of health. Really, this is a great cooldown for before a big hit and after it. Gives you protection and will give you bonus healing through all that pain. Now that pretty much covers your basic moves. Additionally, you'll have some bonus moves to fill in niche roles. Like Torment is your basic taunt move. Throw Glaives is a ranged attack that will generate lots of threat, making it a great move for use on like pulls or when ads spawn. Consume Magic is your interrupt, and even better, if you successfully interrupt something with it, you get a big boost in pain, essentially giving you a free heal through Soul Cleave. Sigils are your CC style moves. Sigil of Flame is part of your main rotation, which just gives you damage, but you also get Sigil of Chains, Misery, and Silence. Chains will pull everything into it in the middle of it and slow them down. Good for CCable ads, which are mostly just for trash. Misery will fear everything for 30 seconds, which is nice. Silence is for, silence. Big surprise. Now, the problem for the Sigils is that they have a 2-second delay after casting before they actually take effect, so you have to be pretty predictive. With enough use, though, you'll get used to them. So practice, practice, practice. I'm sure you'll figure it out. The only move left to say anything about is Imprison, which is a demon-only minute-long CC. Use it on demons to CC them for a minute. Possibly less if you hit them, but only demons. Yeah. Anyway, now that we've covered all the moves at your disposal, let's talk talents. Quick disclaimer. I've done research on several sites out there and videos, etc., but at the end of the day, I do not have a level 110 Demon Hunter on live at this moment. So some of these are up for debate, but I still will give recommendations for each of the talents here. Now, you'll basically get a new talent every 2 levels after 100. 102, 104, 106, 108, and finally at 110. While you get the first 2 talents at level 99 and level 100, basically at the end of your starter zone. At level 99, you'll get your first talent, and your options are Abyssal Strike, which makes your leap move longer and up more often, Agonizing Flames, which increases your move speed while you have Immolation Aura up, and increases its damage, and Razor Spikes, which lets you do more damage and slow targets while your Demon Spikes are up. Really, Agonizing Flames is generally the best here, although I really like the look of Abyssal Strike. Passive talents, yum. And bonus leaps are always fun. Razor Spikes seems pretty much worthless as a tanking option, even if it does increase your damage slightly. At level 100, you'll get your second talent, which includes Feast of Souls, which makes your Soul Cleave do a heal over time on top of its base heal, Fallout, which makes more soul fragments appear during Immolation Aura, and Burning Alive, which spreads Fiery Brand to nearby enemies. In general, Feast of Souls is probably the best for tanking single bosses, while the other 2 are decent for AoE. I'm personally not a fan of Burning Alive since it can only hit a few targets over its duration, and really you won't be using Fiery Brand terribly often. I guess once a minute isn't bad. Fallout is good when there are lots of ads to hit with the Immolation Aura, but I would generally recommend Feast of Souls just as a good talent all around. At level 102, you get tier 3 talents, including Fellblade, which is a charge move that generates pain and gets reset constantly, Flame Crash, which lets your Infernal Strike give a free Sigil of Flame, and Gluttony, which empowers your soul cleave by consuming souls. Fellblade is generally the best here because it will give you pain to use on the cleaves, although Flame Crash has its merits on AoE fights. Gluttony is purely DPS, which is just not useful as a tank. Your 4th talent unlocks at level 104 and includes Feed the Demon, which reduces Demon Spike's cooldown when consuming souls, Fracture, which costs pain and deals damage along with creating new souls, and Soul Rending, which gives you 50% leech during Metamorphosis. Now, for tanking, I think Soul Rending is likely the best, since it just makes a decent cooldown even better and makes you very tanky during Metamorphosis, although the others really aren't terrible. Fracture is a big pain dump that adds a bit of healing afterwards due to some bonus soul fragments, but I think it's hard to justify against the giant pain cost. Feed the Demon is lovely because it's passive, but it's kind of unreliable. Still, I might be playing around with that one a bit more myself. Now, at level 106, you get tier 5 talents, including Concentrated Sigils, which causes all of your sigils to be placed at your feet instead of being cast at a spot, and it lasts 2 seconds longer. Fell Eruption, which costs a little pain and does a bunch of damage, and Quickens Sigils, which activates your sigil 1 second faster and reduces their cooldown by 20%. Now, I can't give a clear-cut winner here, but I would suggest Quicken Sigils since it's passive, and will give you more Sigil of Flames, as well as make your sigil slightly easier to manage. Fell Eruption is pretty good damage, but doesn't really matter for tanking, and you have to weave it into your rotation. Now, Concentrated Sigils is good to remove an extra click, but really doesn't increase your DPS much if at all, and doesn't really help you in the long run. 6th tier talents unlock at level 108, and include Fell Devastation, which does damage to enemies in front of you and heals you slightly. Blade Turning, which gives you bonus parry along with bonus pain after parrying. And Spirit Bomb, which is a great move that ends most story arcs in Dragon Ball Z. But in WoW, it actually launches souls at your enemies, and gives you bonus healing to everyone hit for a few seconds. Honestly, I feel Spirit Bomb is really the best overall, but I would recommend Blade Turning, since it's passive and gives pretty good pain generation. All these are viable options, and you really should experiment with them, but Blade Turning is the only passive one, so really the only one I can easily recommend for new Demon Hunter tanks without further testing is going to be Blade Turning. Now, the final talents unlock at level 110 and include Last Resort, which gives you a 30% heal and free Metamorphosis form when you take lethal damage. Nether Bond, which lets you share health with a friendly player for 15 seconds. And Soul Barrier, which gives you a shield move that consumes souls. Now, Soul Barrier is a pretty cool move to play with, and Nether Bond can have some nice uses when off-tanking, but Last Resort is just so good. It's like Death Knights in their unkillable state or Paladin's cheat death move, which are just fantastic. Last Resort is the way to go unless you want to maximize your potential, which isn't really what this guide is for now, is it? We're all dummies here. So that's all the talents, so let's go ahead and do a quick recap. For beginner Demon Hunters, I suggest Agonizing Flames, Feast of Souls, Fellblade, Soul Rending, Quicken Sigils, Blade Turning, and Last Resort. The only change to your moveset will be to include Fellblade in the rotation, putting it under Soul Cleave in priority, but above Shear with the lump of other moves we've got. So now that we've got moves and talents out of the way, we need to talk about gear. Demon Hunters use leather armor along with every other new tank in the world. Why couldn't they use mail? That'd be new! And are agility-based tanks. That being said, you'll be looking for agility and stamina for primary stats that pretty much should be on nearly all of your gear. Now, for secondary stats, you're going to be looking for these stats in order: Mastery, Critical Strike, Versatility, and Haste. Mastery is your #1 secondary stat, because it increases your damage reduction through demon spikes. Critical Strike will let your heals critically strike, surprisingly, along with increasing your parry chance. Versatility just increases all healing and damage. And finally, Haste reduces demon spikes and immolation core or a cooldown, which will help with tankiness slightly. Mastery and Critical Strike are top priority because of that guaranteed damage reduction and increased parry chance, along with the potential critical heals through Critical Strike. Versatility is third because it's not as directly as effective as the others, but it is more so than Haste. Now, Haste really only increases our demon spikes uptime, but it's just not as good as the others. Now, any other stats on your gear just aren't as good as these, so focus here on these 4. Now, normally this is where I start talking about the differences between this expansion and the previous one, but since Demon Hunters are new, I'll just skip it and move directly into a little class review. I think Demon Hunters are very strong because they do a ton of damage, have very high mobility, and have plenty of options when it comes to mitigation. The only problem is their lack of big cooldowns. Like if Metamorphosis is down, you might be able to get away with Fiery Brand, but you don't really have a lot of options for those big hits if they're coming faster than 3 minutes apart. They have less cooldowns than something like Death Knights, and their cooldowns are not as potent as something like Druids. Still, I don't worry about Demon Hunters being underpowered or underutilized. They're a blast to play, and I'm sure they'll get even more fun when artifacts and legendaries are in play. If you're looking for more Legion content like raids or dungeons, please click the annotation in the video now to be directed to my Legion page. Now here's hoping you've enjoyed this guide for dummies. Please like, favorite, share, subscribe, all that jazz, and, as always, you keep it salty, Internet.